The Holy Bible serves as a very good record book of history, geography, the regimes of various kings, the languages, anthropological details, archaeological details, scientific facts over centuries in both New Testament and Old Testament. And therefore, it serves as a very good reference book for the researchers also. In that context, I would like to take the passage Matthew chapter 2 verses 1 to 12 for our analysis today. It talks about the birth of Christ. Let me take the first verse. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. This verse gives a lot of references to history, geography, and also science. The first part, it says, Jesus was born where? In Bethlehem of Judea. Very specific. In the days of Herod the king. It talks about the reference to history where the Herod the Great, the king, was ruling Judea, and wise men came in search of Jesus. And from where did they come? They came from the east. And scholars say these wise men came from Babylon. And let us see the conversation between the wise men and King Herod. They asked like this: where is he who has been born King of the Jews? To whom they are asking? They are asking the sitting king of Judea, and the Jewish people were under his regime. And direct question comes to this King Herod: where is that king, the baby, the king of Jews? Perhaps the wise men thought in their logical reasoning, most probably in the palace. But Herod was shocked because he knew for sure there is no baby born in his house. The wise men were asking this question. And so what happens in the third verse, we see Herod the king was troubled. Not only the king was troubled, but the entire Jerusalem was troubled along with him. And in this context, we need to search for the historical background. And what does history talk about this King Herod, his background? And also we should see the background of these wise men at the time of birth of Jesus. And we need to know of how he ascended to the throne and became the king of Judea. A bit of a history of Rome. And there was a revolt in the year 46 BCE where the general Julius Caesar took his army and crossed Rubicon River into Italy, and then eventually he gained the confidence of the senators of Rome, and he was made the ruler for 10 years by the senators. But he extended the period and became a dictator. He called himself a dictator. But in the year 44 BCE, 40 senators killed the Julius Caesar, and there was a civil war. And in that war, the close friend of Caesar, Mark Antony, Cleopatra's lover, and Caesar's nephew, the Octavian, who was also his heir, all these people were involved. Finally, the Mark Antony and Cleopatra were killed in that, and Octavian emerged as a victorious king, and he called himself the king, and eventually he changed his name as Augustus. And this Augustus name is mentioned in the Bible, Luke chapter 2 verse 1, and this Augustus Caesar only wanted people to register and census had to be taken, and based on that Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem. So this Augustus Caesar's name is in the Bible. And this is the background of Roman Empire. But now, where does this Herod feature here? So during this period of confusion, people plotting against each other, civil war breaking up, there were governors appointed by the senators of Rome in various regions. So when there was a revolt initially in Galilee, where people refused to pay their taxes, the senators sent this Herod to Galilee. But he was not well accepted there, and so he came back, and then he became the governor of Syria. And he also was very much involved and closely associated with the people of importance in Rome. And he wanted to gain favor through this Mark Antony and wanted to become the king of Judea. So initially he was made the governor of Judea. Note, at that time Mark Antony and Cleopatra were alive. So even when they were alive, the king Herod was made the governor initially and king eventually of Judea. That happened around 39 BCE. And this is how this King Herod became the king of Judea. So after becoming the king of Judea also, he was not well appreciated and well received by Jewish people over there, because the Jews believed only a Jew can be their king. King Herod had the background of Arabs, and he belonged to Palestine. He was a Palestinian. So he did not gain confidence or support of Jewish people. So that gave him tension, and at any cost he wanted to retain his throne and somehow please the people in Judea. So he left his first wife and the child and married another Jewish princess, Mariamne. But eventually he was not at all happy with the people around him. He was always suspicious, always tensed, always wanted to look around to see whether there is any coup or any conspiracy against him. He did not even believe his own sons. He killed his 3 sons. He killed Alexander and Aristobulus in 7 BCE, and he killed his another son Antipater II in 4 BCE, and also he killed his wife Mariamne. And therefore he is known for shedding blood. That happened because of the fear of his throne, and he thought somebody will outthrow him and take his position. To this person, the wise men came and straight question onto his face, "Where is the child, the king of Jews, born?" That would have rattled the King Herod. So that's why he was so tensed, because he was already insecure. To him, the wise men were asking, so why should the people of Jerusalem, the entire Jerusalem, be troubled? The people were troubled because of the cruelty of King Herod. He would kill anybody if at all he has an iota of doubt, or if he thinks that somebody is conspiring against him, or they have some link with the spies. Any doubt he has on anybody would demand that person's life. He killed and massacred people to retain his power and rulership as king. And that's the reason when the wise men came in, people thought Herod is going to take it out on them. He is going to become mad at them, and they expected massacre, killing, and that's why they were troubled seeing the wise men. Now coming to the wise men. Who are these wise men? History says, and scholars say, they came from Babylon. The wise men came from east, and that east is referred to as Babylon. So this Babylon has got significance in many places in the Bible. Now let me just tell you the interesting insight between Jerusalem and Babylon in the context of the birth of Jesus, as mentioned in Matthew chapter 2 verses 1 to 12. Daniel chapter 1 verses 1 to 4. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave king of Judah into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. Now see what is happening. Nebuchadnezzar invaded, where is he from? From Babylon. He invaded Judea, subdued the king, and took away the things, the articles from the temple. So the temple was destroyed by Babylonians, and some of the descendants of the nobles, the descendants of kings, young men with wisdom, knowledge, understanding, quick to understand, who can serve in the king's palace, the best wise people were taken from Jerusalem to Babylon after destroying the temple. This happened in BC 587. So the Jewish wise men were taken from Jerusalem to Babylon after destroying this temple. Now see the interesting connection. The wise men came from Babylon and met King Herod, and this King Herod rebuilt that temple. And in addition to the temple, he also made kind of a trade center, and that is the place where people were buying and selling, which Jesus rebuked, and he took the whip and whipped the people and chased them. And so the king who built the temple was met by the wise men. So after destroying the temple, wise men from Jerusalem were taken to Babylon. When the temple was rebuilt by King Herod, the wise men from Babylon came and met king and asked him, where is the king of Jews? This is another interesting thing. Of course, Jesus during his time said, you see this temple, one day it will be totally destroyed, and that happened afterwards in AD 70. Now we will see the interesting insight. Where are these wise men from? Coming from Babylon. Maybe they were descendants of Daniel, people from school of thought of Daniel. So Daniel was taken as a captive there. Daniel had the wisdom, supernatural gifting to interpret the dreams, to foresee things, And these wise men had the same ability. The scholars say they had the wisdom, they could interpret, they can see the signs on the sky, and they could interpret the signaling from the celestial bodies and even foretell certain things. And this is not surprising because Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says, God created the lights in the firmament with a purpose. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. Of course, for light and days and years, all calculations are done based on the movement of celestial bodies, including sun, moon, and the earth. That can be studied in another video. But one of the purposes of creation or creating the celestial body, the star, is to give sign. In many other places in the Bible, we see the celestial body responding to something happening on earth. One such thing is the star appearing in the east to indicate the birth of Jesus. When Jesus died on the cross, the entire earth was darkened. That means sun, another star, it's also a star. It did not give light. Moon did not reflect light. Otherwise, the entire earth cannot become dark at the same time. But that happened. It signaled. So now, let's come back to this incident. So this Herod knew the wise men are really wise who can interpret things. In addition, wise men are not the three persons we see on the camel in the pictures. The wise men were scholars, rich people, highly influential, who had their saying in every aspect of the happening over there. The rulers depended on them, and they had their say in every policy. And they were influential, and they could make rulers, they could give powers, and they can shake powers. And such influential wise men who were also knowledgeable in interpreting dreams and celestial body signs, they entered Bethlehem. And therefore the entire Jerusalem could see something happening. Moreover, these wise men walked with armed people, as few personals in front and also behind them. So this kind of entry really shook the place, and therefore people saw the difference. Herod could see the true wise men with all their characteristics entering his palace, questioning him on face, where is the baby, the king of the Jews? Another insight from the Bible. Initially, the Israelites were led, ruled by God himself. God brought them out of the house of Pharaoh. Through Moses, he led them, through Joshua, then the judges, then the prophet Samuel. But people revolted and wanted a king for themselves. And that's why God, through Samuel, anointed the first king. Eventually, the kings did not keep up their status. They fell short of the expectation of the Lord and the people. Eventually, because of their very pathetic ruling authority and the ability to rule, they had to be given as captive. Their king, appointed based on their request, could not protect and stop them from being taken as captive to Babylon. So their king failed. They could not protect. Now you see the interesting feature. The wise men from Babylon are now asking, where is the King of Jews? Again, the King of Jews is God Himself, is declared in this particular passage. Human kings failed, so eternal God is born as a King of Jews. He's taking it up again. Who's declaring? People from Babylon declare. So this king failed, they were taken to Babylon. The wise men from Babylon come here and declare, you have another king. You have the supernatural birth over here. The King of Jews is born. This is another interesting coincidence, or another interesting incident, I should say, mentioned here. That's why the Bible is very interesting with all these insights giving us a historical support. Let's go ahead to the next verse. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Why did he call the priest, the chief priest and the scribes? The wise men are referring to King of Jews. So he was asking the chief priest of Jews, you take out the books given by God. Definitely your God would have prophesied, would have given a prophecy. There should be some reference. You better tell me. And then the chief priests and the scribes opened, and they could read the prophecy mentioned in Micah chapter 5 verse 2. It goes like this, and that's again mentioned over here, and it very clearly says, he will be born in Bethlehem of Judea. So that would have given a real shake to King Herod. So the wise men are correct. It goes with the prophecy written in their scripts, in their chronicle. Fine. So he was convinced wise men cannot be wrong. Jewish scripture cannot be wrong. So I am facing a terrible time. That would have run in his mind. So he called these wise men. He didn't kill them. He called them, secretly spoke to them, and just found when the star appeared, he assessed the time correctly, and he also very cunningly said, you go. He was using the wise men as tools. He said, you first go, very carefully search, find where the child is born, you worship, bring word back to me so that I can also worship. He was very crafty in saying that. He had other plans. Now the wise men went. And here another interesting insight. Nobody told wise men but for King Herod that child will be born in Bethlehem. Wise men were instructed by the king to go to Bethlehem to worship the child. So when they came out, they saw the same star which they saw in the east. And the star took them straight to the place. And it says to the house where the child was with Mary and of course with Joseph. So they went there, they worshipped the child, presented the gifts. Here again, many questions arise. Did they go to the manger? Most of the pictures, Christmas pictures, show the wise men in the manger. Most probably may not be in the manger because it would have taken definitely more than 40 days for the wise men to travel from Babylon. You see in this map, from Babylon to Judea, and then being in the king's palace, and then going in search of the child. In Luke 2nd chapter, we see Jesus was circumcised on the 8th day and he was taken to the temple as per the Jewish custom on the 40th day. So most probably Jesus would not have been in the manger. And again the same scripture portion says he was in the house and the wise men worshipped him in the house. Now to the wise men who could understand the heavenly instruction, supernatural instruction, either through the star or through the dream. They were good interpreters, wise enough to interpret the dreams, and God warned them, if you go back to King Herod's palace, he will kill the child. He wants to kill the child. That was the revelation. And they were instructed to go to their place through another way, and they did so. And Herod was so furious. He knew that he was cheated, and that's the reason, as per his calculation of the time of appearance of the star in the east, he thought this child, king of the Jews, should be within the age of 2. And he wanted all the children born in that period to be killed, a massacre of the innocent in Bethlehem. But most of the historians do disagree with this. They don't have evidence. But I think perhaps Bethlehem was such a small place that only few children, considering the population those days, few children would have been born during that period. And that's why it is not a big thing. A few children, maybe in tents, dying, may not be a big thing. Under this cruel King Herod, who was massacring people in groups, and this cruel king killed his own 3 sons and his wife. So he would have killed the innocent children. I believe what is said in the Bible, considering the nature of King Herod. And when did this happen? When did this wise men come? Before the death of King Herod. History says this king died in 4 BC. Most probably, this wise men would have met him in 5 BC. Now, about the star. Did the star really appear and led the wise men? Do we have any scientific evidence for that? Yes. The Chinese scientific record on comets say the comets appeared during 18 BCE, 12 BCE, and also 5 BCE. The comets, it's a celestial object. It's a gassy one. When illuminated, passes by the sun, the heat, it will be burning, and it will look like a tail. And the astronomers could calculate its motion, the speed with which it goes, and also the rate of its burning, and also the time of its appearance, and they also could record its disappearance. After once it burns out, it will disappear. But in this particular case, the Chinese record says, of course, what we saw in the previous one during 12 BCE had all these features of a comet. We could see its movement, its burning, its tail, and the day, and how it disappeared. But when it comes to this comet which appeared in 5 BCE, it does not have all the features of a comet. It appeared, it stopped for a while, perhaps few days, and then it burned, then it moved, and finally it disappeared all of a sudden. And therefore, now we come to the conclusion, perhaps this is the comet which was very different from the other conventional Halley's comet, because it appeared with a purpose to lead the wise men. Once it completed its job, it might have disappeared. Do we have any other research on this? Yes. The astronomer Colin Humphrey, he says, he has correlated this with his data analysis. He says the Star of Bethlehem, which supposedly heralded Jesus' birth with actual astronomical events, he has correlated, and he has published an article in 1991 in Journal of Royal Astronomical Society, and he has also mentioned the star was actually a slow-moving comet which Chinese observed and recorded in 5 BCE. And therefore, this was endorsed by an astronomer. Now, computer modeling is also done, which also correlate and say perhaps it is the same comet which appeared in 5 BCE. And we have one more archaeological evidence. When Augustus Caesar decreed for the census, as we read in Luke chapter 2 verse 1, and it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This Caesar Augustus, he lived during that period, and this Augustus Caesar, the Octavian who renamed himself as Augustus Caesar, the Roman emperor, he ruled from 27 BCE to 14 AD. So he was very much there during the time of King Herod and even after, during the regime of his sons. This Augustus Caesar only ordered or made this decree mentioned in Luke 2, and everyone had to go to their native place for this. That's the reason Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem based on this decree given by Augustus Caesar. And this decree is engraved in the stone, what you see here, and it shows that the decree by Augustus Caesar was made in 8 BCE, 3 years before the birth of Jesus. And it took 3 years for the implementation of this decree because people had to receive it. And they did not have transportation like we have now. And it has to reach to the entire regime and all the places. And people had to travel. And so it took 3 years. And if we see that calculation, the inscription on the stone says 8 BCE. And after 3 years, if Mary and Joseph had gone to Bethlehem, it should have been 5 BCE. And again, this is the second evidence from archaeology. And therefore, if you see, from the time of King Herod, or rather the year of death of King Herod, if we calculate, Jesus would have been born in 5 BCE. From this Augustus Caesar's stone inscription of the decree, he would have been born in 5 BCE. From Chinese record, scientific record of the appearance of this comet, he would have been born in 5 BCE. And therefore, from the point of view of history, geography, and science, we come to the conclusion it is true that Jesus was born, and the purpose of the birth of Jesus is to help people. And he went around doing good, healing the brokenhearted, healing the sick, delivering people from the bondages. And that was his first mission. And the second mission of Jesus was to save the sinners, save people, deliver people from their guilt of sin. And someone believes in heart and confesses, tells it in mouth that Jesus gets saved them, they are saved. As simple as that. So Jesus went about doing good. So the purpose of the birth of the King of the Jews, Jesus Christ, is to help people and to relate with people and to bless. You have enjoyed the interesting insight from the passage related to the birth of Jesus as recorded by Matthew in chapter 2 verses 1 to 12. May God bless you. Thank you.